In this edition of Fix the Flick, we'll be looking at 2011's The First Avenger. The Phase One Captain America movie did a lot of things right. Chris Evans made a great Star-Spangled Man. Hugo Weaving's Red Skull twirled his mustache with the best of them.
We have left humanity behind. Unlike you, I embrace it proudly.
And the movie itself had some great world-building moments. But it seemed that world-building was all that The First Avenger was concerned with. Getting Captain America's backstory out of the way for the Avengers film was more of a priority than telling a story about Steve Rogers. This is plain to see when you look at his character arc, or lack thereof. At the beginning of the release movie, Steve Rogers was an honest and determined patriot who was a good person for the sake of being good. At the end of the release movie, Steve Rogers was an honest and determined patriot who was a good person for the sake of being good. With muscles.
How'd you feel?
Taller.
Had the movie shown us the transformation of Steve Rogers' personality into Captain America, we could have had a much fuller picture of who the character was, not just what the character did. So with that in mind, let's try to fix The First Avenger. When we first see Steve getting his physical in the original movie, one of the other enlisted candidates mentions how dangerous the war front is.
Boy, a lot of guys getting killed over there. Kinda makes you think twice about enlisting, huh?
Nope.
This shows us that not only is Steve well aware of the dangers, but is completely willing to accept them, a character trait that doesn't change throughout the story. In this version, he mentions to the doctor that his father heroically saved several fellow soldiers in World War I. Now, I know that in the comics, Joseph Rogers was a jerk, but this is an adaptation. And it doesn't matter anyway because he's cut short by the doctor who fails him. The point is that we can tell Steve is really proud of his father's heroics and that he wants to live up to him a little. The next scene in the movie theater goes a bit differently than the released version. The original newsreel has a really somber tone and causes one woman to burst into tears. And Steve, ever the conscientious patriot, gets into a fight about being respectful.
I'm on this all day.
But this is the beginning of the story. Steve shouldn't be a perfect, morally upright character. It leaves him no room to develop. So, in this version, we see Steve watching a propaganda film, not a newsreel. We see that he's really interested in the amazing actions of the U.S. servicemen up on screen. He wants to be the guy heroically charging in to save the day. In short, he wants to be the hero that everybody notices. And here's where we see Steve's character arc begin. He wants to go overseas and fight, but not really because he wants to help out, but rather because he wants to be admired. From there, we get to the World Exhibition of Tomorrow. In the original, Steve and Bucky talk about him wanting to fight, and Steve makes a very noble point.
Factory, Bucky, come on, there are men laying down their lives. I got no right to do any less than them. That's what you don't understand. This isn't about me.
That's very difficult to argue with, and also really boring for character development. We're less than 15 minutes into the movie, and Steve's already Captain America, just without the muscles. And I know that was the point, but even after he gets the muscles, there's nothing to overcome. He's an altruistic saint with the body of a god, and everybody loves him. There's no character conflict. So instead, during the double date, Steve admires Bucky's popularity with the ladies, who more than once praise how he looks in his uniform. Bucky notices Steve's reaction and they have an awkward conversation when he decides to leave the date. He finally tells Bucky to go, be a hero, reaffirming for us that that is exactly where Steve wants to be. And Dr. Erskine isn't there to hear it. Instead, Steve meets Dr. Erskine when he tries to enlist again. But it's not the number of tries that gets Erskine's attention. It's the story of Steve's father. Steve tells Erskine the same story about his father he told the first time he tried to enlist. And Steve ultimately gets a shot because of the heroic legacy of Joseph Rogers, the man Steve's trying to live up to. Then we move forward to boot camp and everything goes the same. Steve is slow and always lagging behind. But in this version, lagging behind is why he overhears the conversation between Erskine and Colonel Phillips about Hodge.
Hodge passed every test we gave him. He's big, he's fast, he obeys orders, he's a soldier.
Again, it's reinforced that Steve looks up to the strong guys, the guys that get noticed. But eventually, Steve gets noticed himself and he's chosen for the Super Soldier program. Steve gets his muscles, Erskine gets killed, and Steve chases the spy. But they don't end up all alone on the waterfront. They end up back at the exhibition. So when the tall, handsome GI captures the German spy, there are hundreds of people to cheer him on, and Steve gets the acknowledgement that he's always wanted. And because of that, he falls right into his role as Captain America. Now, when we see him steadily getting better at his performance, we know that it's because that's exactly where he wants to be. Now he's the big hero up on the movie screen, and he couldn't be happier. Until he goes overseas with the USO and gets booed off the stage.
Bring back the girls!
Nice boots, Tinkerbell.
In this new context, when we see him drawing himself as a dancing monkey, it's because his self-styled hero image has been shattered, and he's disappointed. And when he and Carter talk, it's her trying to make him feel better by mentioning all the bonds that he's selling, which are pretty useful to the war effort. But he wants to be a hero, a real hero, which leads him to hearing about Bucky's battalion and jumping at the chance to prove himself once again. And it works. When Steve leads the captured troops back into camp, he's praised by them.
Hey! Let's hear it for Captain America!
He's finally doing the right thing, but he's still doing it for the wrong reasons. And he's riding high on that recognition in London when Private Lorraine kisses him. And this time around, he doesn't really resist. The kiss, being mutual, gives Carter a much better reason to shoot at him. And it hints that maybe all of the attention Steve's getting might be going to his head. If the kiss hinted at Steve getting too full of himself, then the mission to capture Zola on the train flat out says it. Colonel Phillips tells the Howling Commandos that attempting to capture Zola would be too dangerous and orders them to stand down. But Steve convinces the squad to disobey orders. At this point, we see that Steve has gone too far and that all of the Captain America hype has made him believe that he can do anything. But that backfires when they're actually on the train. And it's Bucky that saves Steve's life, not the other way around. So now, when Bucky falls to his presumed death, it's directly Steve's fault. It makes him realize how he was acting, and at the same time, gives him an example of what it means to be a real hero. And a real hero means making a real sacrifice. The way the First Avenger ended didn't require Steve to make a real sacrifice. It just had him make a stupid decision. There was no clear explanation as to why Steve needed to down the plane. And even if there was, we were already shown that Steve had a way off before it went down. He could have easily sabotaged the plane and used the bomb helicopter thing to escape. So, getting rid of that sequence makes Steve realize that he has only two choices. Save his own life and endanger hundreds of people, or sacrifice himself to save all of them. And when Steve decides to put the plane in the water this time, we see that the character has gone from someone who lived to be the hero that everyone loved, to dying as a hero that no one knows about. So, that's how I would fix 2011's The First Avenger. Are there any movies that you think are in need of repair? If so, email me at the link down below or post a comment. And remember to click like and subscribe if you want to see more movies get fixed. Until next time, I'm Mr. Fix-It for Fix the Flick.